Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Marr. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Welcome, everybody, to The Longer Game. I'm your host, Michael. There has been no other host, so I'm the only host ever. But thank you for joining us. We're in our second season, and we're talking with a lot of different people about retail, and I think a much more interesting, not much more interesting, because my first season had interesting guests. Now they're all going to be pissed that I said that, if they're even listening to the episodes. But we've got just a different group that kind of goes beyond some of the initial Amazon digital retail people that we talked with, and so we're getting into just a different group of people. Anyway, today with me is Elizabeth Presher, and she's the owner of Hite Digital Dayton, which is a marketing company or an agency that's helping brands to increase, I'd say brick and mortar brands to increase their digital presence. And I'll allow you to maybe correct me if I'm wrong or talk more about that. But welcome, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to chat.
And you're
we
only
do.
like you're only like 45 minutes from me, but we've never met in person.
Yes, yeah. OH.
OHIO.
I was gonna say you're supposed to I set you up. No. Yes. Good old Ohio.
I was slow on the uptake, but I got it.
That's okay. That's okay. We're not actually Buckeyes fans, so it's okay. My husband is
I'm
an
like
Iowa
not a
fan,
sports
and he makes
fan.
his own version.
Oh, okay. See,
Okay.
I'm not even a big sports person, but my wife, and I've lived here in Cincinnati most of my life, but when the Bengals made it to won their conference and got to the Super Bowl last year, my wife is born and bred in Cincinnati, and so it was like all about it. And I'm like, okay, this year I guess I'm gonna have to like be an official fan. I can't make any jokes about getting a 3-pointer or anything like that. Like I don't know what's going on, and so I have an official Bengals T-shirt from their shop. So I'm now officially a sports fan.
Hooday. That was a good year. We deserve
it was a really good year. And I heard my wife saying, I don't remember this, but that there was a lot of praise for the Bengals fans out in I think the game was in LA last year. Was it yeah, I think it was in LA,
right.
and that the fans were really nice. And that's true. I mean, I think there's the Midwest are good people. When I go to New York, I bump into someone, I'm turning around to say I'm sorry, and they're already gone. But to their defense, they bump into people all the time. You can't say I'm sorry to that many people, so you just have to get used to it. But yes, I do appreciate other people that are from the Midwest. So tell us a little bit more about Hite and what you're doing with companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started in the retail e-com space. Gosh, in 2013, I actually started a mobile boutique. So I was in a job that I enjoyed, but I was really looking for something different. And I said to my best friend one day, I think I'm going to open a boutique. I like shopping. I like clothes. And I had grown up very entrepreneurial. Both my mom started a business when I was born, and it's grown into this amazing cleaning company. My dad, when I was in middle school, started something on his own too. So I was really raised an entrepreneur slash,
wow.
just kind of independent. I was really thankful to have that that upbringing. I always thought I would start my own business, but I didn't know exactly what that looked like for me. Like what was the thing? So looked into opening a
Do
boutique
you think there was
and
also something innate in you that was then developed by your parents being entrepreneurial? Because like I'm an entrepreneur, and the more I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. But I like my parents were not entrepreneurs themselves. It was well, actually, my dad kind of was in his biochemistry career at times, but that wasn't like the main theme for us. So I'm curious to know if you felt
sure.
like there was something that was maybe already there, and just being around that environment kind of gave you more confidence to do that.
Yeah, kind of like the nature versus nurture. I do think that I have a bit of like an anarchist streak. I always say,
Okay.
kind of like I don't think I'm a perfectionist, but I also think, and this is kind of a whole another subject, but I was also diagnosed with ADHD when I was 40, and so I realized like
Oh wow.
a lot of people with ADHD become entrepreneurs for a lot of different reasons. That really like kind of correspond with the characteristics of someone with ADHD. And so I'm like, I do think I had it. I think it was both. Like that was my nature was,
Okay.
independent. I always liked money. I always liked talking about money. Um, I
Okay.
joke, not really even joke, but when I was in college, I would say to my girlfriends, like with their majors, I'm like, oh, you know, we would just talk about like what our parents made or what our houses cost. And none of my friends knew those answers. And I always thought, it's really strange.
Oh.
Money was like a very open conversation with my family. And so I think I was aware pretty early too that entrepreneurship did bring more opportunities than other, things
Okay.
that I might pursue that were more like corresponding with my communication degree. So I
My
think
daughter
that it
asks
was
us all the time
definitely
what things cost. She's like,
yes.
"How much money do you
I
have?"
think
And
it's
we're like, "Are you like going to go and tell your friends? We don't want you to
right,
like. I'm happy to tell you.
right.
How much did your house cost? How much does this house cost? How much does this cost?" And I'm like, "I'm
Yes.
happy to like clue you in. I just don't. And it's
Yeah.
not that I even care about other people knowing the finances. I don't want it to be seen as like, oh, well, my parents have
Right.
this. And like the other day, my daughter said, she's 9, and she said, how much money do you think like do you think you spent like over $1 million in your whole life? And I said, no, not even close. And she's like, really? Like kind of disappointed that I hadn't
Yeah.
spent that much money. I'm like, no, sweetie, like I mean that really is a lot of money. That's a number that's talked about a lot. And when I think
Right.
about like setting business goals, it can sometimes seem arbitrary, but it is for the same reason we might say, I'll get there at 10 instead of like 10:57 or 9:58. Like it's just easier to set those
Hmm.
numbers, so instead of saying, you know, I want to hit $950,000, like a million just sounds different, better. But she was I think ultimately disappointed that I
Very
that I had to
disappointed.
spend that much. I'm like, you have to make that and accumulate it
Right.
before you can spend it. I don't know that
Right.
anyone would give me $1 million
Well,
in credit, nor would I want it. But
right. Isn't that funny? Well, and I think too, I was actually just having this conversation. Now, kids that are watching YouTube and like my oldest knows like the net worth of Michael Jordan. Like I just
mm,
think these things are probably like the information age that we live in. You know, we know so much more, like our kids know so much more and they know how much YouTubers make and they know how much, all these things. And so I feel like it's a different kind of, I do think in a lot of ways that probably breeds entrepreneurs more um, than than back in the day. I met with entrepreneurs yesterday in a program at University of Dayton, and I'm sitting with these sophomores and they're like, I started my first business last year and I have a Shopify store and the other a girl was like, I upcycle clothes and I have a heat press in my room. And I was like,
oh wow,
what was I
that's
what
cool.
was I doing my sophomore year of college?
Yeah,
Yes, it was
I was
the
not was not paying attention. I know that for sure.
no, I was like, he's like, I have a Shopify store and I design and then they're produced in China and then they ship them. And I was working in Clavio yesterday and I was like, wow, y'all, like, you go into University of Dayton is, you know, it's a good school. It is an expensive school. And so you go to it and you sometimes think that there's, like a little bit of, kids that are just going there to have a lot of fun. And I was so
Yeah,
impressed by that spirit
my
and that
daughter was
hard work.
actually
It was not even
watching a. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and speaking about knowing more about money and YouTubers, my daughter has often talked about, oh, this YouTuber makes, $10 million a year or something like that. So I think there's more awareness of that, which I think helps. Sometimes just raising awareness of this is an issue or this is a fact, then people
Mm-hmm.
know, and it just becomes a part of their vocabulary. But my daughter and a friend of hers were watching a video on YouTube that was saying, which company do you think makes more? And it was really interesting. Like Lay's and Haribo came up. I was like, who do you think makes more? And I was like, oh, Lay's. And the girls were like, oh yeah, well they've got more things. And I said, well, Haribo I think owns more. They don't have just that product, and that I
Sure.
think was something. They're like, oh, okay, that was something that was new. Like just because you're Coca-Cola doesn't mean you're only selling Coca-Cola. There's other things that go under it. But there were several. There were several that I got wrong. That I was like, oh, okay. Like I guess I didn't think about it. But a lot of them, the companies they paired together, it was sort of prestige versus maybe like I feel like prestige versus
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe ubiquity.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and when I think about the people that are most vocal, like I make all this money, the people that make even more than those people are very quiet about it. They're not super boasting, so it's like this. Maybe it's the teenage years of money acquisition that you just get a little bit more loud about that kind of stuff. But it was interesting that they were watching this. I didn't tell them to watch this video; they just watched it on their own.
Right. So crazy that they can do that. Like that it's there, that they, and to shape their minds. And I think, you know, like I said, when I started my boutique, as much as I thought I knew, because I was raised by entrepreneurs and I thought pretty smart, there's so much that I learned going into my boutique, and it was a mobile boutique. And so there was a lot of like learning involved, and, kind of the then transition to marketing. The farther I got into, especially as I, started a Shopify store, and I thought, I was very much in that mindset of like, if you build it, they will come. Everybody is going to come to
Yeah,
my site because that's what
right.
we think. And
Yeah,
they did not. And so I then thought, I've got to do something. Like I've got to figure this out. I've got to learn how to drive traffic. I've got to learn these kind of back end things. And I loved marketing, kind of in my previous career. So that's when I took, an Ezra Firestone course, the e-commerce marketing with digital marketer,
yeah,
and that really like changed the trajectory of my career. Um, because I got into the, traffic and conversions and really like working through all those things, and cost of acquisition, and just all the metrics involved. That to me, in the I didn't start a boutique because of that. I started it because I like clothes, and I started it because I
yeah.
wanted to do something different. And then as I got more into this, I realized I loved marketing, and I loved the service side of it. I loved, and I think I've heard you say that too, like
Yeah.
I loved that part. I loved
I became
seeing
an entrepreneur for a
even,
very different reason than why I'm still an entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur because I hated my job, and I'm still an entrepreneur
yeah.
because I love the freedom that it provides me, and I get to. But I'm very driven, and so I get to build and grow things that
Mm-hmm.
are, started by me, and then I get to pass them on to my team, and they make them way better than I initially could. But
Yeah.
I get to create, and I'm very risk tolerant. So like failing at something is okay for me. I think early on, and I talked with you about this before, but early on when I was running my own e-commerce business and it failed after 6 years, I felt like I was a failure because my identity was wrapped up in the success or failure of my
Mm-hmm.
business. And it wasn't until and it was because of that failure that I was able to step back and say, okay, I have identity outside of my business. So even if my business
Mm-hmm.
is not successful, I'm still valuable as a person. And I even try to take it further back from that and say, I was made in the image of God. And even if, like, let's say if my wife left me and my daughter never talked to me again, could I still be happy and have identity outside of those things? And so that really is my goal. I'm not going into those relationships for expecting those people to complete me, but they're very complementary to what I do, and just blessings that are there. But once I got into the service side of things, there was so much more fulfillment, even though it wasn't identity in that, but there was so much more fulfilling work because I just creating products or buying products and selling them, that wasn't very, it was fun at times, but it wasn't very fulfilling. Being able to go in with someone saying, I know exactly how we're going to make this work, and it's going to be so awesome. I can't wait
Yes.
to show you how successful you're going to be. And even in the sales process, talking with brands saying, look, I know you're going to be successful. So when it comes to like initial cost of services for us, like we still have to make money, but I can be flexible in how
Mhm.
we price things because I'm confident that, like, I can't guarantee anything, but I'm really confident that I'm willing to bet our profitability on it. And that goes a long way because then people see you as a partner. And so that has been, it's just so much more fun to
Yes.
watch someone else be successful. And I feel like I'd love to talk more about how we're the supporting actor, supporting actress to this lead role and helping you to really shine. And I'm getting more comfortable, even though I like the spotlight. I'm not going to lie. In a
Yes.
room,
I
I'm
feel that.
the one
I'm
that's telling the stories and trying to be just the funny class clown kind of person. But I'm getting more comfortable with being the person that's maybe behind the other person, which also speaks to the journey of having children, which is a great. I saw someone on Twitter that said, all my smart friends are not having kids, and all my stupid friends are having a lot of kids. And there was this guy, and Twitter's just, it's filled with interesting stuff. But I'm on there to try and
right.
raise my profile around Amazon because I have a buddy that's doing it, and I was like, okay, like I'll give it a shot. But this guy,
Right.
he said, oh, that's terrible advice for entrepreneurs. Having kids is like one of the best things you can do as an entrepreneur. And he goes through all these things that are related to the process of being a business owner, like sales. You have to convince someone that they need something, and he was like, you have to convince your kids that they need
Right.
to do this thing, quote unquote, sales. You
All
have to
the
make
time.
sure that your kids are happy, customer service. And I was like, oh, that's so
Yes.
great, like that's so smart. That really is a good test of, can you withstand
Oh,
entrepreneurship, because there are going to be people that are the kids that are not going to be grateful for the things that you're doing for them, and you have to just be okay
yes.
with that because you know that you're hopefully fulfilling a larger purpose there.
Right. Right. And I think too, when you compare it to clients, like that not everything's in your control all the time. And we do our job and we do our job the best of our ability, but things don't always go the way that we want them to. And I think that's parenting, like in a nutshell, that we want to raise these people. And I think going back to your the identity thing and like finding your identity and like because God made you. And we talk to our kids about that so much
Yeah.
because there are so many things not like that are roller coasters in our lives. Is you know if we as women find it in our looks, like we're gonna get older, and that's a hard thing to think about.
Yeah.
And not that we should not put effort into staying in shape, not that we shouldn't put
Oh
effort
yeah, absolutely.
into being healthy. Like those are important things.
I
We
think it's
should
about
still
being a
put
good
effort.
steward of what you've been given.
Yes. Yeah. And with our
Yeah.
family. And one of the things, even like as an entrepreneur, that as a person, that I think about a lot too, is like those values. And like my husband and I've talked recently a lot about, you know, saying what are our core values. And it's one thing I used to think, like, I've written my core values down, like I've accomplished something. And then I realized if what I'm living is not matching up to those core values,
Mm.
there's nothing to it. Like the way I'm spending my money and my time and my effort and my attention, like good for you for writing them down, speaking to myself. But what
Right.
is it if you haven't lived that?
Right.
Like congratulations, like you treated that person like crap, but you wrote down you value people, and so I think that's a piece of that,
I
entrepreneurship
think that
and
speaks
parenting and all
to.
of it.
Well, I was just gonna say, that's so well said, and I think about that too. Is what I'm doing here actually living out what I say my purpose is? Because, and I talk about this with. I was actually at Xavier University talking to a class on entrepreneurship yesterday. So it looks like we're both doing
Everybody,
the
right?
university
You're
thing,
allowed, but
and but I
yeah.
really enjoy. Sometimes I'm like, it's hard to read the kids, and there was an 8:30 class that I was talking at, and one kid was like, and I wanted to call him out for sleeping, but I'm like, I think I've been there in a class. I wanted to say like,
Yeah,
man, this
yeah.
guy's really not liking what I'm saying because I'm watching him like
Right, you're
doze, but
like,
I'm like, it's cool. I wasn't offended. I just wanted to like kind of make a joke about it, but I didn't. But
yeah.
I'm talking to them and I'm saying, people, the professor who I know who has been an entrepreneur and even just the concept of teaching entrepreneurship at school, I don't really know how I feel about that. I think it's good that it's being taught and there's more awareness, but it is really about getting out and doing it because
Mhm.
entrepreneurship and I would even say brands, there is this sex appeal to being a brand owner, or if you look at like Beyonce's clothing brand or any celebrity that has any kind of clothing brand, there's fame and there's like a sexiness to it, but there is a very unsexy side to being an entrepreneur, and I'd say probably 85 to 90% of it is that, and so you have to be okay to traverse the muddy waters or the slop, the mundane day in and day out stuff that doesn't feel so great. You have to be okay to traverse that and not be so much focused on the 10 or 15%. One of the things I think about is, if I'm successful, am I putting too much stock in that? And if I'm unsuccessful, am I getting too down and like upset about that? Like, can I keep going and moving forward, as opposed to saying, oh, this down or this up was terrible. But anyway, what I told some of these classes was, just be honest with yourself about what it is that you're doing. If your goal is to hit $1 million or something and that's it, I think that's okay. I don't think you'll ultimately be fulfilled in doing that if it's just about that. And I said, when people say it's not about the money, I think they're full of shit, because it is about the money.
Right.
But if it's just about the money, then there's nothing else that goes beyond that. So, like, don't get me wrong. I want to be able to help feed my family, and I want to, have money to go on trips and things like that. Like, the money is important, but there has to be more than beyond the money. But I said, just be honest with yourself about it. If you're saying, oh, I'm an entrepreneur because I'm doing this for my family, and you look back and you're like, oh, I don't spend any time with my family. Your values or what you're saying or your values are not really aligned with what you're doing. And I bring that up to say, how much, from your experience, how much do you think the problem with business owners, or even retail business owners who are trying to sell a product to someone, how much of maybe their lack of success is tied to saying this is what we do, but then them not actually knowing what it is that they do?
I think very much. And I think, a big part of it too, and this ties in with what you were saying with like Beyonce and the brand and the sexiness and so before I became a part of Hite Digital, my agency was called Grit and Grace Digital Marketing, and we work a lot with boutiques. And so, I like the prettiness of Grit and Grace. And, I think when I started, I was like, grit, yeah, like that's such a buzzword. And I do love, because it's, it's so needed. And, studies keep showing us over and over again, it isn't about talent, it's about grit. And even starting Grit and Grace, I was like, I've got grit, I'm scrappy. And I realized
I like that word.
Scrappy.
Yeah, it's a good word.
I mean, it's like, it's a,
I use it with brands or clients. I'm like, we're scrappy. Like, we can figure this out and get it done.
I actually, so I played soccer growing up. That was my sport. And I played club soccer through 6th grade, but I was always the shortest on the team. And I remember one of the grandpas that used to watch, he said to my dad, and my dad still brings this up like 30 years later, but he'd say, that grandpa would be like, I bet that girl has a lot of brothers. She's scrappy. Like, she looks. And I was like, I'll take it. I had a mean older sister, but I didn't have brothers, but she's not mean anymore.
Yeah, but still, you were scrappy. I think that's a good thing, though, because it means you're resourceful, and you're able to, like, I told the classes that I spoke to yesterday, I believe I'm a smart person. I don't think I'm especially more intelligent than the next person, that you're looking at, but I'm willing to figure it out, and I'm willing to go the extra mile to figure it out and to troubleshoot, and I've got persistence. Like, if nothing else, I am persistent. I might lack a lot of things, but I'm and maybe sometimes to a fault, I just keep going when it's like, you should probably give up on this now. It's time to let it go, and I've learned lessons from that. But like, being persistent, in having endurance, or at least a desire to build greater endurance, or the capability to do it, even if you don't have the desire, because sometimes I show up to work and I'm like, I don't want to deal with this crap, but I still do it because I know that it's important. So being able to have the capacity, maybe I should say, to build endurance is very key to being a successful entrepreneur, successful brand owner, successful retail company, if you think about the way that the pandemic changed things, there were a lot of companies
Right.
that had to fold because they were not adaptable, or they chose not to adapt, or they didn't know how they needed to adapt. And there were a lot of companies that were born out of the pandemic, or that were
Yes.
successful and grew during that
Yeah.
time, because no one knew that there was going to be a global pandemic. Although I will say, my wife and I have been watching Last Man on Earth, that Will Forte uh,
Uh-huh.
from SNL. Have you seen that show?
I have it. Is it good?
It's good, and it's eerie, because the whole show
Oh.
is about. It was done in like 2016, or
Oh
yeah, I think
gosh.
2016, and the whole show is about how in 2019 a global pandemic hits and kills almost everybody in the world, and there's only like like one guy left, and it's really like a couple people. But you see footage of, they'll go back during when the pandemic started, and like TV announcers are wearing masks, and other people wearing masks, and there's all these like protocols, and it's like, oh my gosh, like he must feel like a genius because he called it, but no
Yes.
one knew that was going to
Yes.
happen. I mean, I'm
Right.
sure there's some good conspiracy theories out there, but no one knew that was going to
Sure.
happen. And so you have to adapt, or else, or at least be adaptable, and say, there were a lot of, I think, business owners who, and I think maybe it was you and I were talking about retail stores, who said, okay, we need to have. Oh no, you know what? It was a woman that I talked to who owns a branding agency, and she said that she was helping a lot of like local store owners to develop their brands, and she got into e-commerce because the pandemic hit, and they're like, we need to get a
Oh,
store, like a digital storefront. We need to be adaptable, and so now she does most of her work in e-commerce, and they still do branding and other things like that for retail companies. But that was a big part of not just these companies changing, but her as a service provider. She had to adapt.
absolutely. Well, it's funny because I mean, COVID changed my entire business. We were really focused on, we had a Shopify loyalty program that was built in Messenger, and we were growing with it slowly. And then with COVID, all these boutiques were like, we need a we need a better e-commerce strategy. Like we've either got to, like we have to be prepared to shut down again, or we have to be prepared, and so we did a lot of Facebook ads, and really exploded during COVID, and it changed, like it completely changed everything for me too. And so,
Okay.
through that, and this kind of goes back to the grit and grace and the like fighting. I I was grit and grace, like I wanted to be grit and grace, but you don't really know the grit you have until you are facing something really hard. And because we exploded during COVID, we didn't have SOPs in place to support that growth because it happened so
Ah.
fast. And as it's happening, we didn't have the SOPs. And so we were playing catch up. And, there was just a lot. And in the midst of that, you're dealing with iOS 14. And then you have, like all these changes.
Mm.
And it was a lot of catching up. And ultimately, it led me to become a part of Hite Digital. And it turned out to be one of the best things that has ever happened to me. And I'm so thankful and proud to be a part of this organization. But it was, like you said, do people sometimes say who they are, but they're not really? That time was when it like, do you have grit or do you not? Like when you're getting texts from clients that, you know, where they're disappointed, and a lot of that is external forces that I had no control over. But like it is the hard stuff that you don't want to have grit, honestly. Like I don't want to be put in a situation where I have to show my grit, because that's the hard stuff. But it is through that hard stuff that you, like, as a mom, I want my boys to see, like, yeah, I was sitting on the ground crying when I got that text from a manager of a store that's the meanest text I've ever received in my life. But yeah, I also got it the next day, and I looked for the answer, and I fought for my business. I fought for my clients, and I made changes based on that too. Again, some was external and some was things that I was doing. But I want my boys to see, like, grit isn't fighting when it's easy. Grit is fighting when you've made mistakes, when you're dealing with other people's mistakes, when you're dealing with hard stuff. And so I think, businesses in general, we go into it, you go into it for the, the end and what you see successful businesses doing, the lifestyle, then you're going to be disappointed because that's not the beginning. That's after a lot of really hard stuff. And my favorite entrepreneurs, my parents own a commercial cleaning company, and my, dad, when needed, would go and clean those toilets. My mom worked
Your
or,
favorite
you know,
entrepreneur was
I
was not Steve Jobs? Is that what you're saying? Or Mark Zuckerberg or all the very famous people?
it is not. It is not. It's my, it's those like it's my former boss who owned a catering company and like was out there with us, like in the trenches, sweaty in that tent wedding and fighting
Mm,
for her business and showing, it kind of goes back to like we were talking about a little bit before with, parenting and, you know, modeling that behavior. When we're yelling at refs, which you and I are not yelling at refs, but when people are yelling at refs,
hopefully not.
that's
Yeah.
modeling, right? That's what our kids see. And again, it goes back to I say I'm not going to yell at the ref, but I think that that entrepreneur thing where you can be that example and like model that behavior to your employees, to everyone around you, and to your clients, so they see like you know this is not for show. Like I want to be in the trenches, and that goes back to your point of like that joy and that like fulfillment that comes from the service side of it. Like it's it's so fun. I remember my first Black Friday outside of retail, owning a retail business, but I had 20 clients, and I was like, yes, this is like I get to be home on Black Friday. I'm gonna just like I
Yes.
don't have to worry about things.
I used to
And
work at
but then I
Starbucks, and
realized,
Black Friday was I would always go to the
whoa,
store in the mall and help a friend out who owned the store there because I would work there at one point, and we would get up
yeah,
at like I'd get up at 3 and have to be there at like 4, and there
oh
was like 15 people on this tiny floor of this tiny store, and it was a beast. And
yeah,
by the end of the day, like 5 p.m., I was like, man, I'm toasted. So
exhausted.
not having to do that, or having like other family
Yeah,
members that, oh, I have to go, I work at Macy's, I have to go work this Black Friday sale. I'm like,
yeah,
man. And one of the things that I felt for them, but one of the things that frustrated me the most is starting to see, and I think COVID reversed this, and I hope it stays this way, but starting to open up on Thanksgiving.
yeah,
Why are we doing that? What is the intention behind that? Do you really need that? Are you really getting that many more sales, and do you really need those, or would the satisfaction of your team,
hmm,
and the thing is, the people that are setting these policies, it's not the people that are working the front lines, it's the people.
right,
And that's why I think entrepreneurs that, like you talk about your boss that was fighting, in the tent wedding, and getting after it and getting in the trenches, those are the kind of people who know what it's like to be responsible for the business, not make a decision for the business, but know what it's like to be responsible for
yeah,
that. And so they value when someone works hard, and likely value giving that person time off and saying, I want them to be with their family, so we're going to close on this day and we're not going to do anything because whatever sales we might make might actually hurt our integrity, or it might
right,
make us not aligned with our vision anymore. And those, from an entrepreneur perspective, and I've said this before, but I would rather because I think at a certain point, very famous and successful people, there's a level of selfishness that has had to be there, and I'm not necessarily placing a judgment on that, but there's a focus on self that has had to be there to elevate yourself to that
hmm,
place. And a great example is this guy behind me, Prince. I'm a huge Prince fan, but he couldn't really hold a long-term relationship down. And one of the reasons, and he has a song called Guitar, or My Guitar, and the like hook of the song is, I love you baby, but not like I love my guitar. And he
hmm,
put a lot of effort and commitment into his work, and he's got great work. But when you look at how he treated other people, like people would he would fly people in and say, hey, you're going to be a part of this show, and then an hour before, hey, you're not part of the show and I'm not paying you. Like, what? Like, you need to pay my guys at least for like coming out here. Or hey, like at 3
right,
a.m., engineers, hey, like they would stay close to Paisley Park, his home in Chanhassen,
hmm.
Minnesota, the suburb outside Minneapolis. And we could do a whole show on Prince trivia, but we won't. And
I bet,
but he would call people up at 3 a.m. and say, hey, I've got an idea, like come in and record. And the thing is, people wanted to be a part of it because they knew
right,
that it would be something that would be history making. But he
hmm,
could never hold down a long-term relationship because he was so focused, I think, on himself. And to me, there is a period, and I think there's still a piece of me that does want that. If I'm honest, like I would love to. There's a piece of me that would love to be just so known as the best at something.
Mm-hmm.
But I've chosen, because I think it's a better choice, if I have to sacrifice some revenue because it means I actually get to make memories with my family, I'm good with that. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
again, being clear about what you're about, I talk on prospecting calls all the time, or with partners that might refer people our way, and I say we're willing to forego revenue and growth if it means we're not going to fully be aligned with that person, because we might make money for 3 months, but then they're gonna call it off,
Absolutely.
and that's not what the agreement is. We have a minimum term, maybe of 6 months, although we're hoping to work with someone for much longer than that. But if they're not
Sure.
invested in it, we've spent this time, and honestly, they probably wasted money in us because they didn't really reach the full potential that was there. And so if we're not aligned on stuff, I'm okay with missing out on the revenue, because it means we're not going to be investing in something that is not going to give a return for either of us. So, like, again, being clear about why you're doing something. If you're a brand, why are you in business? Do you have a mission statement? Like, when I start a prospecting call with someone, they want to know, what are your capabilities as an agency? And I'm like,
Right.
and
Right. What's your
sometimes I'll just
ROI?
say, hey, look, yeah, and sometimes I'll say, hey, I just want you to know, like, yes, uh, most people know what we do, but I say, we're pretty much
Sure.
a custom done for you service agency on Amazon, so we can do anything that you need to. But I really like to start these calls by finding out more about you and about the brand. And if there's not a lot
Mm-hmm.
there, we're probably not going to be a good fit for that person, because we really believe in the power of a brand. And if they're just wanting
Mm-hmm.
to hit a sales target only, it's going to fall flat. And we're again, a lot of people will say, oh man, it's this crazy time of year, and we've got all these clients that are focusing on um, that are checking in with us throughout the day on metrics or things like that on a Black Friday or something like that. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
or it's Q4, things are crazy on Amazon, and I think,
Right.
wait, really? Like, you really feel that? I don't feel that, because the people that we're working with, they expect that we're going out there and taking care of it. And hopefully we built trust with them that they believe that we will. But I don't have people that are checking in and saying, how's this promotion going during the day? They might say, like, hey, how did things go afterwards? But
Right.
they expect that we're going to do it. And also, if someone's wanting to check in on a daily basis or an hourly basis
Mm.
on how well something's going, I think we're missing out on what the point of those kinds of promotions might be. Maybe for a brick and mortar store, it might be to drive additional retail sales. But for something on Amazon, any kind of like the Prime Fall Day event that just happened, that's not about
Mm-hmm.
profitability. Is it about driving sales on your listing so that you can get higher visibility organically. And there's a lot of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
goes into that. But that's why you do that. So if you're focused on profitability throughout the hour, you're probably doing something. I think you're doing something wrong for the wrong reasons. And so I want to cut that off of the head and say, if that's the kind of relationship we're going to have, then it's not going to work, because we're focused on building a brand long term.
Right. Well, and I think too, to be at that point in your business, I think when I first started, especially on the marketing side of it, because in the boutique side of it, we had a lot of success being a mobile boutique. It was fun, it was different, we got a lot of press. And then when I switched to marketing,
And that was
like,
novel then. I mean, not a lot of people were doing mobile things. Like, food
oh,
trucks have
super.
become very popular in the past
Yeah,
5 years, but
it was
COVID, I think, pushed that even more. So, yeah.
right. It was like we were the first in Dayton. There was one in Cincinnati. So like we got a lot of excitement. And then I started a marketing agency because I thought I had this unique, and I still think I bring something unique being a boutique owner. But like, newsflash, unfortunately, there are a lot of agencies out there. And so, when we first started, it was
Yeah.
like, you want to work with me? Okay. You're about to go out of business. Well, I'm going to save you. I'm going to save you.
Yeah.
And now I realized that doesn't work. And, or we have people that come to us and they're like, I have worked with 17 agencies and they just didn't get it done. And I'm like, I'll get it done. And now I'm like, nope.
Yep.
Like they weren't the problem.
There's so
Like,
many
now we know who the
variables.
problem. Right,
Right.
right. And so,
No one
but
understands
but
what I'm going for. Well, what you're going for is impossible. I've had people say, we want to
right.
do $2 million in revenue on Amazon. Okay, well, what are you willing to do? Like, what is your capabilities in ad spend? Well, we're probably going to spend $500 to $1,000 and see what happens. So I will stop people in a prospecting call and say, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm being honest.
Sure.
your expectations of what you can do sales wise with that budget are not aligned, you will not make that. So there's going to either need to be like, are you willing to say we'll do less sales and the target will be not as
Hmm.
high, or hey, we can spend 30 grand a month to start
Right.
on advertisements. And the person, I'm thinking of a specific call, but it was like, yeah, well, okay, well, like just get us a proposal and we'll decide. No, I'm not going to get your proposal. I waited, a week. I said, well, I'll follow up, to see where we're at with things. And I waited a week and said, hey, just want to follow up. Here's kind of where we left off. You're going to either need to increase ad budget, or we're going to need to decrease the sales target. Are those possible? And the email back was just, we're not going to do that this year or next year. Thanks.
Oh,
I was like, okay, well, glad I didn't create a proposal, because you start to see
right.
the expectation. If expectations are malleable and you come into it saying, we know that there's potential on Amazon, but we trust that you're going to be the ones to do it, that's going to be a great relationship. I don't care what your product is, unless it's it's a sucky product. But if that's
Right.
the relationship, it's going to be good. But if someone comes in saying, the past 17 agencies I work with just couldn't get the sales we wanted, well, they didn't tell you that your sales goal was unrealistic for what you're asking for, and that's
Yeah.
why it didn't work out. And maybe either no one told you that, or they did and you didn't want to listen, and so they didn't quote unquote get your vision. Like that, the alignment of expectations is huge. And you're right, there are a lot of agencies out there. Some of them care about the quality of work, some care about the revenue
Right.
only.
And some I think too, I was talking to someone and I forget what they said, but they said something with the agency where, I mean, it was just, there was a big disconnect in quality versus, what of expectations. And I said, the reality is that agency owner, and I'm a Susie Sunshine, like I like to believe the best of people. I think
Yep.
there is sometimes where they want to give the best. Like, even with us, we do a lot of Facebook ads, and that's tricky because there's so many variables. And um, you know, I will show clients, I don't even like case studies because I'm like, there's so many variables that I can show you these amazing results. And I want everyone to experience these. Like we use the same
Hmm.
principles, but it doesn't always happen. And so I think there are some agency owners or agencies, people out there that they want to do what they say they're going to do. They just like, again, there's that, action disconnect. And so, I think we fight that. I'm sure you fight that all the time. We have people come to us. We work with a
I
lot of,
want to guarantee
you
some
know,
people because I know they're going to be successful, but I
yeah,
can't. I can't.
yeah. No, right,
It could get
right.
me a
It's setting
sale,
our
but I won't.
right. And I think there's like for me, especially, and I don't think it is necessarily a woman thing. I think that it's a personality thing, but, um, you know, I could be such a yes person. And I think, as I've gotten into this, and I think as I've gotten more of like that, um, just an abundance mindset of like, kind of what you're saying, when we meet with people, when I do consults now, they are interviewing me, but I do want to interview them. And I want to say, like,
Yep.
I want this to be a relationship where you feel like you can trust me. I want us to have fun on these calls. Like, fun isn't the goal because I want you to make a lot of money, but I want this to be a
That can be
relationship that's
fun. Making money can be fun.
yes, yeah, it is really fun. Like we can celebrate, but like I want it to be there are enough of my people out there that I can help and I can help them build a business and I can help them, build their life the way they want to. There are enough of those people and I realized it now. I used to think there were like 3 of them and now I'm like there's a lot out there. And so I think it's made
Just getting
me
to those people. Sometimes it's getting through the
yeah, it is.
prospects that don't see it, and then
Right.
be saying, "Hey, I noticed that." Finding a pattern. Hey, I noticed that all the people I talked to were in this industry, or were that didn't fit with me, or were
Yeah.
over here. Maybe I'm going to focus more on this other industry here.
Yeah. One thing to good clients too. I mean, I'll say to clients like, I want 15 of you. Do you have friends that are just like you? Like because
Yep,
especially in the boutique space, it's very community. Like you have your boutique besties. And so I'm like,
I like that.
we have a really good referral fee. Send them my way. But not the good, not the bad ones, just the good, not really. But the ones
Yeah,
that,
we have it. We have an
that
opposite
will trust.
referral fee where if you send us someone bad, you
Yes.
actually have to pay
Yes.
us.
Yes. That's a
We
good
will. We will
idea.
get into litigation with you.
Right. Here's the contract. It could go either way, but
It could
you're
go
in control.
15%, 20%, either way. Just you
Right.
decide.
It's actually
But I
that
think
is
if
really
someone does have a good relationship with you, they're probably more likely to know, hey, I like this person. I want to send them someone that's good. And that's been one of the ways that we've built our agency. We built it based on referrals, but I've also done that with my team too. I had people that were referring other people that have gotten on our team before I offered like a referral fee. But anyone that comes on now and they get a couple $100 if someone stays for at least 4 months, because that's anyone that typically bails out and doesn't work out, it's like less than 3 months. So I just want them to be a little bit longer than that. But they refer people because they don't want to crap where they eat. I like working here. I don't want to bring someone on that is going to make my job harder. So I'm going to bring someone on that I actually enjoy working with, even if they are a friend.
Yeah, and something that you feel confident in. And that is hard, right? Because I think sometimes we have friendships and we're like, I thought this person would be really good and this didn't work out so well. And then sometimes you see I worked with a guy who did a great job, and it was a pretty stressful job, and it wasn't like the best fit for this family at the time. And my parents at the time were hiring a sales guy. And I was like, oh, you should go work for my parents. Like, I think you'd do well. And I think he just celebrated like his 15th year there. And like, it's really fun to see when I still have not seen $1 from that referral.
Oh, sure.
But I do bother my dad about it sometimes. But I think,
Dad, can you buy this dinner? I would really like if you could buy this, please.
Right. Thank you for raising me, but I think he's not surprised that I have a running tally of what he owes me, despite the fact raising me, putting me through school and all that. But,
just raising and putting you through school, no big deal.
Right. But I'm the child too that at Christmas I was like, is everybody's gifts even? Wait a second, I think you owe me an extra stocking stuffer. So
you're the bookkeeper.
I am. I'm even Stevens. And I do it with my kids. As a mom, it's maddening because you spend $7 here and they're like, oh, I've got to make it up there. It gets very expensive because it just keeps going. But I digress. But I do think that referral, it's relationships. It is relationships that keep us. We've even found growing through strategic partnerships and relationships and building those relationships for a few reasons. We have really strong relationships with a few app companies that we serve mutual clients. We don't do the exact same thing. We serve the same people. And what I love about it is not only can we serve the mutual clients, but I can get to know them, and I can get to know them well enough that we know the upcoming technology and we know the changes and we know the tricks and tips to really serve our clients well and invest in that on both sides. And it's, paid off in a lot of ways. It's paid off in success for our clients, but it's paid off in growth for us. And those are always, and it keeps you on your toes, I think, too, because you're if I'm oh, I don't feel like doing this today, I'm oh, I owe it to these people that have really invested in me too. So.
Well, that speaks to entrepreneurship. It's showing up and doing the things even if you don't want to do them. Elizabeth, I think we could talk for much longer, so maybe there needs to be a part 2. But if people want to find you, where would they go? Would they go to the side of a Little League game and maybe veins popping out and yelling at a referee? Is that where they're going to find you? Are they going to find you? I mean, where can people go if they want to see you? Not anymore. Okay. Well, never, but maybe in your head.
I've cooled off. No, I'm just kidding. Then I was going to go places with my threats, but they were really naughty. They can find me. Keep it chill. Mama Bear is it's a scary thing. Mama Bears are we're scary, but it's Elizabeth_Presher on Instagram, or our site is HiteDigital.com/Dayton is our mini site. So you can also connect with me personally on Facebook. It's Elizabeth.
Okay, and if you're listening, it's Presher as in Presher, not under pressure.
Yes.
Like the
Correct.
Queen and David Bowie song. Everybody, retail continues to change. That I think change is just inevitable anyway. But as retail changes and evolves, and sometimes with bigger catalysts like the pandemic, and now retail's come back, at least according to Shop Talk. That's their slogan, that retail's back. And so, just be on the lookout for things as they change, and don't expect things to stay the same, and maybe even be willing to adapt more and quicker, because that means you might actually get to the bag. So anyway, that's the end of the show. We don't have anything else for you, so get out of here. Thanks. All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, even go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon Marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.